going on? All right, we are in the book of Hebrews tonight, where we've been for the entire year of 2026, and we're pretty much right on track. We were actually a little bit ahead for a little bit, and we're kind of leveling out. We should be finishing up Hebrews at the end of the year, so we're going to carry on from where we're at now. But we have been over here in Hebrews in the 11th chapter. We've been looking at it. A real quick background on Hebrews. You guys get this every week. A letter that is being written to the Jewish Christians who are flirting with the idea of going back to their old ways, going back to Judaism, back to the old law. The author of Hebrews is systematically going through and showing them that they have a better, more sufficient way now with Jesus Christ, and with the old, against the old and the new is a better way. And we have been in chapter 11 for the last few weeks, and we have been talking about faith, because chapter 11 is all about faith. It is the Faith Hall of Fame. And so far, we have spent time looking at the faith of Abel, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, and Moses. So we've spent some time looking at the faith of all of these people, and tonight we are going to start over where we left off last week. We're going to be starting over in the 11th chapter. We're going to be starting in, if I can get over here, we're going to be starting in the 30th verse, and we're going to look at the last individual. Now, there's some individuals named here, but the last one that's named specifically for faith that she had. And then the author of Hebrews starts to wrap this section up. So we're going to finish out the 11th chapter of Hebrews tonight. This is one of those lessons when I was putting it together today, and over the last few days, but when I was finalizing it all today, I thought, I'm spending a whole lot of time in one place and then a little bit of time in another place. So this may be one of those nights that we either go through this really fast or we don't finish it. One of the two things is going to happen, or maybe it'll just happen as it should, but it will happen as it should, however it happens. So we're going to be reading Hebrews 11, starting verse 30, through the end of the 11th chapter. So start with me over in verse 30 of Hebrews 11. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they were encircled for 7 days. By faith, the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe when she had received the spies with peace. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah, also of David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women received back their dead, raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. Still others had trials of mockings and scourgings, yes, and chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two, they were tempted, they were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains, in dens and in caves of the earth. And all these, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise. God having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. So this is a great way that the author of Hebrews wraps up this last little section here on the Faith Hall of Fame. And as we've been going through here looking at all these different instances of faith, he starts to wrap this up with the walls of Jericho. Verse 30, by faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they were encircled for 7 days. So most of us know that story from the book of Joshua. The Israelites had came and encamped outside the walls of Jericho. It's right after they crossed over the Jordan into the land of Canaan. The first place that they have to conquest when they come in, the first place they have to conquer is Jericho. And if you remember the story, God told them what they needed to do, that they needed for 7 days to march around the city, and then on the 7th day to march around the city 7 times, and then blow the trumpets. They had the Ark of the Covenant there with them to let out a great shout. And what happens? But the walls of Jericho collapse, and they fall down, and the Israelites go in and they conquer Israel. But before that happened, something else took place, and that's the next verse that we look at in here. Hebrews 11:31. By faith, the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe, when she had received the spies with peace. So we've got Rahab the harlot. Her story is over in Joshua chapter 2, starting in the first verse. If you got your Bibles, go ahead and open them up over to Joshua chapter 2, because we're going to look at this story of Rahab, and we're going to talk a little bit about Rahab this evening, about something that she did, and this was actually brought up a couple weeks ago, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about this. So Joshua chapter 2, starting in the very first verse. Now Joshua, the son of Nun, sent out 2 men from Shittim to spy secretly, saying, "Go view the land, especially Jericho." So they went, and they came to the house of a harlot named Rahab, and lodged there. And it was told the king of Jericho, saying, "Behold, men have come here tonight from the children of Israel to search out the country." So the king of Jericho sent to Rahab, saying, "Bring out the men who have come to you and who have entered your house, for they have come to search out the country." Then the woman took the 2 men and hid them. So she said, "Yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they were from. And it happened as the gate was being shut when it was dark that the men went out. Where the men went I do not know. Pursue them quickly that you may overtake them." But she had brought them up to the roof and hidden them with stalks of flax, which she had laid out in order on the roof. When the men pursued them by the road to the Jordan to the fords, and as the men pursued them to the road to the Jordan to the fords, and as soon as those who pursued them had gone out, they shut the gate. So here's the story of Rahab. The spies have come to Rahab's. Joshua is smart enough, we're not just going to go marching over there and attack Jericho. We need to check this out first. So he sends 2 spies across the Canaan to the city of Jericho to check it out. They come to Rahab's house. Rahab is a harlot. Everybody in here, I think, knows what a harlot is. They come to her house. Her house is built on the actual city walls. They go to her house, and the king finds out that they're there. The king of Jericho sends men to Rahab's house in order to arrest the spies. Rahab lies. Rahab tells the men, not just one lie, but a couple lies. When they get there, they ask her about the men, and she says, "Well, I don't know where they came from." But when you look at the story, that when Rahab starts talking to these spies, she knows where they came from. She knew who they were. She knew who they served. So Rahab starts out by lying by saying, "Well, I don't even know where they came from." And yeah, they were here, but then they left, and they're gone. And if you hurry, you might catch them. And the king's men go running out after them, and they shut the city gates. And then Rahab goes up to the spies who she has hid on the roof. Now, this was a question that was asked a couple weeks ago when we were talking about Rebekah. When we were talking about Rebekah and Jacob and Esau and the deception that they pulled on Isaac in Jacob taking Esau's blessing and birthright. And we talked about this a little bit. We talked about her and Jacob deceiving Isaac, and the question was brought up, is there a right time to lie? I have done this in our Sunday school class, I think, when I was teaching the teens in there. I think every time I've taught the teens, every time I had a new class, at one point or another, this question would come up. Is there a right time to lie? No? Okay, we got a hand up. What?
There is.
There is?
Like you did with your dad after your brother died.
Oh, wow. I never even thought of that. Well, thanks, Randall. Your preacher's a liar. No, but, okay, so my dad, as everybody here knows, he had dementia. And the further he went, the worse it got. And there were times that he would come in and he would say something to me, like he came in one day and he sat down and he said, "I really don't want to go out on that rig today. I'm just exhausted." And I looked at him and I said, "Oh, they called, Dad. We got the day off. We don't have to go out on the rig." And he said, "Thank goodness, I'm just exhausted." I could have told him the truth. "Dad, you don't work there anymore." And it would have caused a lot of... So was that right or wrong on my part? Well, I got y'all thinking now, don't I? Thanks, Randall.
I don't know if you heard me, but I said when your brother died, your dad mourned over and over.
Oh, that one too. Yeah. But that wasn't really a lie there. That wasn't really a lie there. When my brother was killed in a motorcycle accident, my poor dad would ask where he was at, and every time we told him, he had no memory. He couldn't maintain memory. So every time he was told that Jimmy had been killed, it was the first time he was being told. And for about a week, it was horrible, because for a week, every time he'd say, "Now what? Where's Jimmy at?" And we'd tell him, in his mind, it was the first time he was ever told. So it finally got to the point, me and my mom kind of got into it, because she was telling him, and I finally told her, I said, "We can't tell him that anymore. He doesn't remember us telling him that yesterday, and it's the first time every time." So what we did was we just started telling him. It wasn't really a lie, because he would ask where Jimmy was at, and I'd say, "Well, he went home." I'd just say he went home, and kind of leave it at that. But there were times when he was in his state that I would go along with whatever world he was in, So, wow, I wasn't expecting to go there around.
Well,
But
I've just been recently there too.
Yeah.
With my dad, and you have to go along. You can't.
Yeah, you can't, because you can't do anything with that. You really can't.
Calvin was just there with his mom.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do.
And there's a difference between lying to seek in my mind versus
Well,
keeping that person from absolutely falling apart. They're not with you anyway.
Yeah.
You've got bits and moments of their life still.
Yeah.
And nothing makes sense to them. So if you can keep them some kind of sanity or
yeah.
happy, in my mind, it's a little different, and I hope that's
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a good point, though, Randall, because if I'm going to be held accountable for that, I guess I'll just be held accountable for that. And I can't imagine God.
But when you say he's at home and he's waiting for you,
Yeah.
where's the lie?
Yeah. Oh, that's what I say. To me, I wasn't lying. I just said he went home. And the last day that my dad was alive, right before he passed away, I told him, I said, "It's okay for you to go. Jimmy's there waiting on you, and the rest of us will be there soon enough." And he went. So, but, all right, back to Rahab, though. Okay, these are... We're not going to finish tonight at this rate. Okay, is it right to lie? Now, here's the thing. Think about, there's three deceptions that are alluded to in the Faith Hall of Fame. Now, Rebekah's not mentioned in the Faith Hall of Fame, but Isaac blessing Jacob and Esau is, which goes back to the story of Rebekah and Jacob deceiving Isaac so that Jacob could receive that blessing. The midwives that deceived Pharaoh when Moses was born, when Pharaoh had told the midwives, "You are to, when those women have little baby boys, you are to destroy them." And the midwives told Pharaoh, "Well, the Hebrew women are just hardier than your women. They have those babies before we can even get there." So they deceived Pharaoh. And then we've got Rahab, who lied to the king's men. So is there a right time to lie?
According to Colossians, the 3rd chapter, verse 9,
Okay.
do not lie to one another, since you have put off the old man with his deeds.
Put off the old self.
But now that's lying to other Christians.
That in its context, that's lying to your brother. That's lying to each other. So this is a question that, I kid you not, has confounded theologians forever. And I spent a lot of time, especially on Rahab and especially on the Egyptian midwives. I spent a lot of time, I read a lot of commentaries. I went and watched some different things on it. There's as many opinions on this as there are people out there to give an opinion. There really is. And so we're going to talk a little bit about it tonight. You've got these three cases in Hebrews, the Faith Hall of Fame. Now, Rebekah's not mentioned in there. Let me get over here. So Rebekah's entire story is found over in Genesis, and her deception is really the highlight of her story, is when her and Jacob deceive Isaac so that Jacob can get the blessing. And then beyond that, Rebekah's only mentioned in one more real story, and then after that, the only time that Rebekah's mentioned again is basically in genealogies and when she dies, that her and Isaac were buried together, where Abraham and Sarah are buried, and they're buried there. So she's not mentioned a whole lot in there. She's not mentioned. She wasn't blessed in any special way or remembered for anything that she really did. So Rebekah's deception, in my mind, is a little bit different than the deception of the midwives and Rahab. Rebekah's deception was kind of a self-gaining deception for her and Jacob. It was something they were going to get out of that. Now, you got the midwives. The midwives deceived Pharaoh, and they were rewarded. They were rewarded. They deceived Pharaoh, and look over to Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1, verse 21. Genesis chapter 1, verse 21, 20 and 21. This is after they have gone to Pharaoh and they've told Pharaoh, listen, the Hebrew women are hardier than your Egyptian women, and by the time we get there, they've already had the baby and it's too late. Therefore, God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very mighty. And so it was, because the midwives feared God, that he provided households for them. So they were blessed. But here's the thing. It doesn't say he blessed them for being deceitful, does it? It says he blessed them because they feared him. They feared God. They knew what they were going to do was going to be the wrong thing. Now, they're in a conundrum, because if they're at the birthing stool and that woman has a baby boy and they murder the baby boy, have they not just broken God's commandment?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So you're going to have murder, or you're going to have a lie? Did they pick the better of two evils that they had?
They chose to die
Yes.
rather than to break God's commandment.
That's exactly right. Because if they had got caught with this, they're goners.
Yes.
They're goners.
Question for you.
So.
In the case of the birth of Jacob and Esau,
Uh-huh.
I was trying to look it up, but didn't Jacob's hand come out first and Rebecca attached a ribbon or something to it?
Yeah.
And so she identified...
She identified him as first.
actually
Yeah.
the firstborn. So did they really lie?
Well, and we talked about that when we talked about Isaac blessing Jacob and Esau. Because full birth, Esau was the firstborn and Jacob was the second. But then later on, before she even had those babies, she had an angel came and told her, they were tossling in her stomach, and she inquired of the Lord and said, why is this happening to me? And the Lord said, there are two nations wrestling in your womb, and the older will serve the younger. So, we kind of talked about that. Was she trying to help God along because she knew Isaac was about to bless Esau with the firstborn blessing, and she kind of stepped in to help because she knew God had already said that Jacob would serve. There's a lot of variables going on in there. So in her mind, I don't know if her deception was thinking she was helping God or Jacob was her favorite. I mean, it says Jacob was her favorite son and Esau was Isaac's favorite son.
But
So
again, is that
yeah.
because she identified him as
Very well could have been.
broken the...
Yeah.
had extended his hand first?
Yeah, very well could have been.
And so that was... she saw him as truly the firstborn?
Truly the firstborn. Yeah. Yeah. That very well could be. Very well could be. But
Usually we think of a lie as something that will gain us
Us.
personally,
yes.
or harm someone else.
Mm-hmm.
I think all the things we are discussing here is not that.
No.
It is not for our
No.
self,
Mm-mm.
gratification or causing someone else pain.
Yeah.
And I will add to that, thank goodness I don't judge.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's why he's in that seat and we're not. I mean, look how much trouble we're having just with this, So, yeah, but they, the midwives were saving lives.
Yes.
They were saving lives by what they did.
Yes.
They were doing what's right.
They were doing what's right.
The same with your dad, you're doing what's right.
Yes.
Not cause him more pain.
Yeah, yeah. So then back to Rahab. So we, got the midwives. They were doing what was right to save lives. And we get back to Rahab. Now, there's no doubt what she did was a straight up lie. I actually read a couple commentaries where they said she didn't really lie. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to close that one and put it away because I won't come back to you again, buddy. This is a straight up lie. She's got the guys hidden on the roof. And she tells the king's men, I don't know where they came from. And when you see her speech to them later on, she tells them, we know you. We know where you came from. We know the God you serve. We know what you've done. She tells the king's men, I don't know where they came from. And then she says, but they left. It's a straight up lie. They left. They're gone. If you hurry, you can catch them. And then when she gets the guys out from underneath the flax that she has them hidden under, she tells them which way. She gives them instructions on how to avoid the king's men. You go the opposite direction, you stay there for a few days, then you cross the Jordan and get back to your people. I mean, she takes care of things. So there's no doubt this was a straight up lie. But again, she's not commended for lying either.
No.
Over in Hebrews 11, that commendation's not for her lying. If you look back over there, what it says is, by faith the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe, for she had received the spies with peace. Doesn't say she was commended for telling a lie, but that she received the spies with peace. So here's some things to consider about Rahab's deception. Number one, lying's a sin. Okay? I mean, it is. It's a sin. God says it in the Old and in the New, not to tell falsehoods, not to lie. So it's a sin. Every human being, except Jesus Christ, when he was a human being, sins. That's all there is to it. We're all sinners. We've all been sinners, and we will all sin. Every hero in the Bible sinned. Every one of them. You go back and look at them, every one of them. And I mean, it's just a little list. Noah got drunk. Abraham lied. Moses lost his temper. David, the apple of God's eye, committed adultery. He lied. He conspired to murder. Actually, you could put the blood of his commander's on his hands. That blood was on his head. You got Peter. Peter denied Jesus. Then he was a hypocrite later on when he withdrew from the Gentiles and started hanging out with the Jews because he didn't want to be, you know. Then you got Paul. Paul called himself the chief of sinners. Now, what if we put the same litmus on all of these guys that somebody might want to put on Rahab? And say, well, you know, how come Noah wasn't held accountable? How come Abraham? How come Moses, David, Peter, Paul? All of those. All of them were sinners, yet all of them were commended for the lives that they led. And the fact is, all of us are sinners. And the grace of God is nothing new. I mean, the grace of God is a New Testament theology, but it's nothing new. The grace of God's been around for a long, long time. So number one, Rahab's not doing anything really any different than any other hero in the Bible. The way she's doing things different, though, is Noah got drunk because he wanted to get drunk. Abraham lied because it was going to suit him when he told the kings that Sarah was his sister and not his wife. Moses lost his temper and went out and yelled at the Israelites and smacked that rock and basically took credit for himself instead of letting God have the credit. David, everything David did was selfish that he did. Peter, he was just scared to death. He lost his backbone. And then he lost it again when he went with the Jews. Paul was just totally misguided in everything that he was doing. He was working on a fast track going to the top when he was a Pharisee. Rahab, the midwives, I mean, they were doing something for somebody else. Those lies were not to enhance them at all. Now, Rahab, you can argue that, well, Rahab asked the spies, remember me and my family when you come, so it was kind of selfish, but it wasn't, and we're going to get to that here in a second. But number one, the first thing about Rahab is she's a sinner like all of us are, and everybody falls short.
Are you going to get to, just out of curiosity,
I don't know.
before I interject too far, to Romans 3?
No. Go ahead and hit that if you want to right now, because I do not have that in my notes.
So Romans 3 is really verses 1 through 8. It says, when what advantage has the Jew, or what is the value of circumcision? Much in every way, to begin with, the Jews were entrusted with the oracles of God. What if some were unfaithful? Does their faithfulness nullify faithfulness of God?
Yeah, that is a great passage. I wish I would have went there. I wish I would have went there. Yeah. Where's that? The 4th verse there. Certainly not. Indeed, let God be true, but every man a liar. You know? Our sins, their sins, didn't nullify the grace and God's love. Just didn't. God took care of the things the way that God took care of things. And Rahab was no different than anybody else. Well, she actually was than this bunch that I got listed here, which is the second thing I'm going to talk about, because we're all sinners. That doesn't change God's grace, like Romans 6 tells, or Romans 3 talks about. But the second thing is this. Rahab, she wasn't the same as all these other ones. Rahab was a Canaanite harlot. Now, I want you all to think about that for a second, because we all know what a harlot is. We all know how she made her living. And she was a Canaanite. She lived in the land of Canaan and was one of them. And we need to take into consideration the people of Canaan were some of the wickedest people in the ancient world. They absolutely were. They were horrendous. They used witchcraft, tried to cast spells. They had rituals where they were trying to contact the dead. The worst thing that they did, and they did it wholesale, is that they offered up human sacrifices. And oftentimes, even back in the book of Leviticus, talks about it, they would offer up their own children into the fire to their gods. And then try to contact them after they did that. I mean, these were a very wicked, wicked people. Now, the reason I bring this up, over in Leviticus, as a matter of fact, Leviticus 18:25, for the land is defiled. And this is God talking about the Canaanites. In Leviticus 18:25, he says, for the land is defiled, therefore I visit the punishment of its iniquity upon it, and the land vomits out its inhabitants. This was a wicked, wicked people. The reason I bring that up is because Rahab was one of them. Now, was she as wicked as they were? I don't think so. I think she was a Canaanite that probably looked around, was doing what she had to do to survive, was doing what she had to do to live, but she sees something better. Rahab, for one, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, in the contact that she has with the spy, she indicates to them that we know of you.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
know that you're coming.
Yeah.
And we tremble in our hearts because of it.
Oh, they're terrified. Yeah, yeah.
So she has the ability, although she's living in the means by which she is, and she is a Canaanite, she sees.
She's deciphering what's going on here.
Deciphering what's going on.
Yeah.
Her mind is open to the fact that
Yeah.
God's people are coming.
Yeah. And the thing is, Rahab knows God's people are coming, but Rahab doesn't know the laws of God.
No.
She's living in this wicked, evil society.
Yeah.
The last thing she's thinking about, I mean, this isn't even an infraction in her society.
No.
Telling a lie?
No.
That is no big deal. That's nothing. She didn't know the laws of God, but she did know this. Look over to Joshua chapter 2. Back there where we were at just a minute ago. Joshua chapter 2, starting in I've got the 8th verse there, but I think we're actually starting in verse 10. Joshua chapter 2, starting down in verse 10. This is Rahab talking. This is her telling the spies after she gets them up and she's telling them, they've been here and everything. She says, for we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the kings of the Amorites who were on the other side of the Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. And as soon as we heard these things, our hearts melted, neither did there remain any more courage in anyone because of you. Get this last sentence here. For the Lord your God, He is God in heaven above and on earth beneath. Amen. Do you know what she just did? She just confessed the God of Israel.
Yes.
And she knows. She doesn't know all the laws. She doesn't know the customs. She doesn't know, but she knows that this God that the Israelites serve is the Lord God in heaven above and on earth below. She recognizes that. She confesses that. She knows what's happening here. What was you going to say, Stephen?
You can parallel that maybe in a way with someone who becomes a Christian today. They don't know everything there is to know about being a Christian.
That's Yes.
realize that Jesus, God's Son, they
Yeah.
realize all that, confess all that.
Yeah.
And then they're baptized and they start walking the Christian life. And as they go on,
They grow.
they learn more.
And they learn more.
What
Yeah.
it's all about, what God.
Exactly.
Kind of what she's done here. She's used to worshiping idols.
Mm-hmm.
Used to all this other stuff, but she does recognize a God.
Mm-hmm.
Has heard about this God.
Yep.
Realize that this is the God.
This is the
We
God.
need to be whatever I have to do, I want to be with.
She is where Rahab, and I love that you brought that up because that's such a good point. Rahab is at a point of transition in her life. Rahab is at a point of transition in her life. If we have somebody that we preach the gospel to that comes forward and gets baptized and walks out the door and goes and tells a fib or something like that, they're in transition. Do you get what I'm saying? This is what Steve's talking about. They're new to what they're doing and they're going to grow and they're going to learn. Rahab doesn't know any better right now. The one thing Rahab knows is the most important thing. And that is the God of the Israelites is the Lord God of the heavens above and the earth below.
Yes.
I know that and I want to transition to that and I want to be a part of that. And what I got to do, I'll do.
Is she not mentioned somewhere in the New Testament for her faith? I mean,
Yeah, and James. In the book of James, she's mentioned again.
Yeah.
So she's mentioned twice in the New Testament. Well, 3 times if you count the genealogy of Jesus, because this is Jesus's great grandmother. So I don't want to be the one that goes to heaven someday and ask God, hey, how come you didn't kick Rahab out for lying? I mean, she's going to be Boaz's mother or grandmother. I can't remember the genealogy now, but it's going to carry down into the book of Ruth and all the way down to Jesus Christ. That's exactly right. That's why we're not sitting in that seat. Yeah. So this is what she's recognized for, that she had enough faith in God to stand up against an evil king who had evil intentions. This is what she's recognized for. This is what she's called out in the book of Hebrews for, that she believed in God. Not that she lied. Yeah, she lied. But, hey, she was from a society she didn't know. And again, we're back to that same thing like Randall was talking about. This was a lie. It wasn't going to benefit her a bit. What if they would have found those spies on the roof? She's dead. They're going to kill Rahab. She put her life on the line to save those other people. So, back to the question. Is there a right time to lie? So, here's what God says. All right? If I can get there we go. Proverbs 12:22, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who deal truthfully are his delight. Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. These 6 things the Lord hates. I didn't list all 6 because it's right in the first 2. A proud look and a lying tongue. Ephesians 4:25, therefore putting away all lying, let each one of you speak truthfully to his neighbor. Revelation 21:8, but the cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their place in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. So, clearly God's against it. The question really needs to be is what is the motivation behind what's taken place? Think about, I know nobody in here ever has, but think about any time that you have ever told a lie. What was the motivation in telling a lie? Now, short of what was going on with like my dad, if I'm telling a fib or a lie, I am benefiting in it some way.
Yes. Either from stopping punishment being received.
That's right.
Or maybe to get over on someone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost always going to be self-serving. It's almost always be self-serving. Rebecca's was kind of self-serving for her and Jacob. They're not mentioned much anymore. The midwives saved hundreds of lives. They're blessed by God. Rahab saved the spies and her family, and she worshiped God. She's listed in the Faith Hall of Fame. She's listed again over in the book of James. So here's the thing. I don't want to get in trouble saying this, but Now, I might get in trouble for saying this. There are times. If I would like to think that I would, if I were living in Europe during World War II, if I were living in Nazi Germany, and my next door neighbors were Jewish, and I hid them in my house, and the SS came and kicked my door in and said, "Where are the Jews?" I would like to think that I would look at them and say, "I have no idea." Will God judge me for that? Because that happened all over Europe. I mean, it's not a clear cut yes or no.
Yeah, well, like you say, the motivation for that, though, is not for your gain.
It's not for my gain. That's what I'm saying. I think the question kind of needs to be, what's the motivation? Yes. Now, here to bring this to a sort of, hang on one sec, Doug, while I got this on my head. Here's the thing, is that bringing us back to a full circle, how often are we put in a position like Rahab? Are we put in a position like the midwives? Are we put in a position like the people that hid Anne Frank? Not very often.
The farther we
So,
stay from evil,
yeah,
the farther we are eliminated from that position.
yeah. So don't take what I'm saying as, well, Ben says that it's okay to lie, because no, it is not okay to lie. However, we have seen in the Bible, by example, where people did that and were still blessed by God for what they did. What was you going to say, Doug?
We have all sinned.
Yeah.
We've all done different, quote, sins. Whether
Yeah.
it be sins of flesh, sins of mind, your actions, quote, telling a white lie or whatever. If it's a lifestyle, you're in trouble.
You're in a lot of trouble.
If it is a one-off situation, like you talking about that,
Yeah.
again, if you're a child of God, I think God is going to give you lots of.
I think there's going to be a lot of grace. I think there's going to be a lot of grace extended, just like there was with Rahab, just like there was with the midwives, just like I think there were with Christians in World War II that were hiding Jews and doing things like that. I did read where, y'all know who Corrie ten Boom was? She was a Jew that survived the concentration camps in World War II, and she wrote a lot of books, became a motivational speaker for years and years until she died. And one of her books, she was writing about this very thing, because she'd converted to Christianity, become a Christian. She was writing about this very thing, and she said, sometimes you don't necessarily have to lie, but you don't have to tell the whole truth either. And she said that she knew of one family that were hiding Jews in a cellar underneath their house, and they had dug it out and they had built an access in their kitchen with a trap door that was hidden with a rug, and their dining room table sat on top of it. And they put the Jews down there, and she said when the Nazis would show up, they would come in and they would say, "We're searching for Jews. Do you have any Jews in your house?" And the owner of the house would say, "Oh yeah, we keep them hidden under the table." Guess what? He was telling the truth, because under that table in the trap door down in the cellar, he had Jews hidden down there. But, that's what I say. I don't remember, we were in Buc-ee's, and I don't even remember why, but I had one of these shirts on, and I went up to check out, and the guy behind the counter, he looked at me and he said, "Man, I like that shirt." And I said, "Oh, thank you, I appreciate that." And he said, "You golf?" And I just started laughing. I said, "I've never stepped foot on a course." Then he goes, "Oh, that's a nice shirt though, man, Callaway." Now, I could have said, "Yeah, Callaway," and I'd have been lying. Or I could have not said anything at all, and I wouldn't have been lying, and I would have let him believe I was wearing a Callaway shirt. But I said, "No, Sam's." And he said, "Hey, they're comfortable, aren't they?" And I said, "They're great, I love them. $6 to $10 a piece. Callaways are expensive." So, but anyway, you don't have to. When we come to this whole idea of lying, I think sometimes we can get ourselves too cut and dried, And I've read some commentaries that were Absolutely not. And just because Rahab did it, and the midwives didn't have to do that, because God would have saved those babies somehow else. They should not have lied. Rahab should not have lied. God used what they did to accomplish God's purpose. So I think sometimes we can get too black and white about some things. So we could actually do this, I think. All right, we're off of the lion and off of Rahab, and we're on to the rest of Hebrews 11, verses 32 through 35. And what more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah and David and Samuel and the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. So here we've got all these greats in the Bible and all of the things that they accomplished. And the thing that they accomplished it with, the cornerstone of it all, was their faith.
Amen.
That was the cornerstone of what they accomplished. You go back through all of those greats, they were great people filled with faith. And if they hadn't had that faith, that whole list wouldn't have even existed.
Right.
Because they wouldn't have been able to do what they did. Look over in your Bibles over to 1 John chapter 5. 1 John chapter 5. 1 John chapter 5, starting in the first verse. 1 John 5, starting in verse 1. John writes, "Whoever believes that Jesus is the Christ is born of God, and everyone who loves him who begot also loves him who is begotten of him. By this we know that we love the children of God, when we love God and keep his commandments. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments. And his commandments are not burdensome. For whatever is born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith. Who is he who overcomes the world but he who believes that Jesus is the Son of God? And this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith." The faith of all of those giants back in the Old Testament. And then the last verses 35 through 38 in Hebrews. "Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they may obtain a better resurrection. Still others had trials of mockings, scourgings, yes, and of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two, they were tempted, they were slain with the sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and mountains and dens and in the caves of the earth." So they accomplished great things, and then they also suffered great things. Having faith doesn't guarantee an easy life. Often it's just the opposite. To be a person of faith doesn't mean that everything's going to work out perfectly for you in this life. And oftentimes it means that you're going to face conflict and trouble and problems. If you look over to 2 Timothy, the 3rd chapter, if you look over to 2 Timothy chapter 3, starting verse 10, Paul writes to Timothy and he says, "But you have carefully followed my doctrine, manner of life, purpose, faith, long-suffering, love, perseverance, persecutions, afflictions, which happened to me at Antioch, at Iconium, at Lystra, what persecutions I endured, and out of them all the Lord delivered me. Yes, and all who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution." If we're going to be a faith-filled people, we're going to face persecution. The faith-filled people in the Old Testament who grounded their life in the faith of God, they faced persecution, they faced trials, they faced tribulations, they faced problems. The people in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul right here telling Timothy, you know all about my life, you know all about the persecutions, you know all about all the things that I went through, but God delivered me from all of them. And then he gives Timothy that warning. All who desire to live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. So our faith allows us to do great things, but our faith will also bring some things on us.
Makes us a target to Satan.
That makes us a target. The more faith we have, the harder Satan wants us to fall, and the bigger a target we come to him. So then the last two verses of Hebrews chapter 11. "And all these, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise. God having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. So all those heroes of faith, they didn't get to see the promise of Jesus Christ. They didn't get to see the Messiah. But we have been provided something better, Jesus and the new covenant. We have that. We have received that promise. Now, in its context, the author is reminding, remember why he's even writing this letter. He's writing this letter because they're thinking about going back to the old way. In its context, the author is reminding the Jewish Christians how blessed they are, and at the same time reminding us how blessed we are to being recipients of the new. Why would they ever want to go back to the old? And why would we ever want to step out of this life and go back to the world that we lived in before? And that's the whole thing that he's reminding them. This faith was all pointing. It was all heading towards the Messiah. They didn't even get to see it, but you have. Why would you want to turn around and go back to that? So, Hebrews chapter 11, the Faith Hall of Fame. All the greats lived lives of faith. That faith was accompanied by their actions. You go through there. They were filled with faith, and their faith was accompanied by action. It was an active faith. Their faith in God's grace outweighed their shortcomings. They were faithful to death, yet never saw the promise. How blessed we are to be recipients of the promise. And we made it. Anybody got anything else? That's going to wrap up Hebrews chapter 11.